What up, guys? You are currently looking at a picture of, it's the painting, or a picture of the painting of the Last Supper. And the Last Supper, of course, was painted by Leonardo da Vinci in the 1490s. I think it was like 1495 through 97 or something like that. Not sure. Piece of Italian Renaissance, very prominent Italian painter. If you're Italian, or you're someone who's like an American of Italian descent, an American Italian, then you're probably very proud of of your history, and that's good. You probably should be. I would be proud to say I was, of the same countryman as Leonardo da Vinci if I were Italian, but I'm not. But my mom loves this painting actually, and it's a very wonderful piece of history. It's a wonderful piece of art history, and it represents changes in the way that art was done. But this is actually not the way the church, the Christian church, whether it be Orthodox or Catholic, any of the ancient Christian churches, which that pretty much sums it up. The ancient church is either Orthodox or Catholic. But this is not how the church portrayed the Last Supper. This is how the Italian Renaissance portrayed the Last Supper. And there are some major differences in the way that you would see it. And I think that those differences are very important, and are kind of sum up the way that the church represents theology and things in general. So the way these images are painted, when you look at Italian Renaissance paintings especially, it is meant to demonstrate reality. You are looking at like something the way that we would think of like a photograph being portrayed. But this is not actually how the church has ever painted things before. So I took a picture of this while I was at church tonight. I kind of wanted to bring up some things. So this is the Last Supper. And I know that some of our evangelical Protestant friends will flip out when they see things like this, because it's not the way that they think that it's supposed to be portrayed. But this is the way that from the time of the apostles, as far as we know, until events like the Italian Renaissance came along, that Christians portrayed the Last Supper. And there are some things that are wrong, I guess, if you're thinking of paintings as a photograph. And so, because some of these things would not be here. Number one, the first thing that I actually noticed, because I go to St. Paul, the Apostle Orthodox Church, and St. Paul is portrayed on nearly every icon on one side of our building. When I see images of the Apostle Paul, it stands out very quickly. And if you look at this figure here, this is the Apostle Paul. So if you have even just casually read the New Testament, you might ask yourself, why would the Apostle Paul be in a painting or an icon of the Last Supper? He shouldn't be there. He didn't even enter the picture until the book of Acts, and then even then, for the first good number of chapters, he was actually persecuting the church. So why is Paul, the great persecutor of the church turned apostle, and apostle of Christ, why is he portrayed in the Last Supper? It's a good question. You see Paul on this side and Peter on this side. So this is the Apostle Peter. If you actually look down, I don't have a picture of this, but in this wall over here, you can't see it, but if you were to look inside the altar area, there's a this exact same picture of Peter, and he's holding the keys, showing that Christ has given given Peter the keys of the kingdom. And so you kind of see like that these things that you see in the icon, they are theological. They are not meant to be pictures or representations or even exactly history. They are sometimes historical in nature, and they demonstrate things that were happening in history at the time, but these aren't meant to be pictures the way that we tend to think of them. So Peter and Paul are both represented out front in the icon, showing that they were major figures in the church. They were, major apostles, and so they're often demonstrated together all the time. So Peter being an apostle to the Jews and Paul being an apostle to the Gentiles. Peter, of course, went to the centurion Gentiles and had a whole thing about how it was perfectly fine to go into the house of Gentiles after God showed him a lizard on a sheet that got pulled back up into heaven. So you kind of see, like, Peter was not just an apostle to the Jews, but the primary audience that Peter preached to and that Peter went to was Jews, because that was the primary demographic of people that were following God in that time. And he preached that Christ had come, the Messiah, the Christ, had come. So, Peter's ministry was to those initially in Jerusalem. And St. James actually was the bishop there. He led the church, as you see in the book of Acts, chapter 15. But Peter and Paul together, they anoint the bishop of Antioch, where they're first called Christians. And then Peter and Paul together, of course, anoint the bishop of Rome. And Peter by himself, I think, anoints the bishop of Alexandria, if I remember that correctly. So Peter anoints a number of different bishops, and several of them are anointed along with the Apostle Paul. The last one is at Rome, and that is the place of Peter's martyrdom and where he ends up. That is the place of Paul's martyrdom as well. Another kind of key thing that you see in this painting is the table of the Lord. So you typically, when you read the story, it talks about them reclining at the table. So you typically wouldn't think of people standing around a square box like this, the way that they're demonstrated here. And it's because this is not a table. This is an altar. And it's the same length, width, and height. Maybe it's not painted exactly to those dimensions, but if I had done a better job in thinking about this, I would have taken another picture down in the altar area, because directly below this painting here, the painting of the altar, you would see that the altar at St. Paul the Apostle Orthodox Church is directly below this, and it looks very similar. You see that it has the bread on the table. Christ is holding the chalice. So this is his body given for us. This is his this is his blood giving for the remission of sins. And so you kind of see that theologically there is a message or an understanding that Christians have had about how these things are portrayed. This is not a table the way that you see it in the Last Supper. This is a table that they are eating at. This is an altar, and it's meant to theologically express that Christ is the Lamb. So when we celebrate the liturgy and the priest gives thanks, he gives thanks for the bloodless sacrifice. So this is Christ, of course, gives his blood, but the sacrifice that we offer on the table is bloodless, because we are offering bread and wine, which in turn it becomes Christ. It becomes the body of Christ, and it becomes the wine becomes Christ's blood. So his body and his blood. And that kind of represents, I think, most of the things that stand out to me right away. Just some more general things that are more obvious. Maybe you see the six-winged angels, the flying above Christ here. Christ has a halo. He alone has the halo that says oon. In Greek, this is o. You see o at the top there, and then on. He is the existing one. This is like in Hebrew, they have yod he vav he. In Greek, this is meant to express that he is the existing one. He is the eternal. He is almighty. He is all things. It's the existing one, the one who was, who is, and who always will be. So that's a theological thing in and of itself. Notice that none of the apostles at this point in the Last Supper, none of them have halos. Usually you'd think of, saints being portrayed with halos, but none of them have halos because they haven't become saints yet. It's not till after the resurrection, that they go on to become saints. So they're not portrayed at this time. So there is an aspect of time, I guess, that is portrayed in this icon, since that's not done. That line below it says the body of Christ the body of Christ, taste the fountain of immortality. Yeah, so we sing that usually during communion. There's some scriptures I think on the table there. I don't know exactly what it says. I come down from heaven. So I am the bread of life, or I am the bread which came down from heaven. So, yep. All right. I don't really have too much else to say about that. I just kind of wanted to bring up some of those differences between the way that like church iconography is and the way that like Italian Renaissance. Many atheists and ignorant people will make comments about church and what the church teaches, and they will make references to things like the Last Supper or to other paintings that were not part of church exactly, not part of the church for at least the first 14 centuries. And so it's a little late in the 1400s. I realize that now we're 600 years removed from that, but if you're looking back at church history and understanding Christian theology, you can't wait 14 centuries and then start saying, well, this is what the church teaches. It's too late. The church already has fixed beliefs. This is a very important and significant painting to Western culture and to Western people, and it expresses changes in art and beauty and things like that. And I don't have anything against that. In fact, I like that. I think those are really cool things. And even though I'm not Italian, I am a Western person, and I take some ownership of those things and love of beauty. But nevertheless, the theology of the church doesn't change because Western Renaissance Italian paintings are made. This is the way that the theology of the church is expressed. This is something that a Christian person painted. And if you go to like the Vatican and you go in and you're able to look around, I've only seen it in pictures. My wife and my daughters have gone and actually seen in person the city of Rome. You see some of that, and that is in the Vatican Catholic Church there. So in St. Peter's Cathedral. So maybe that's a little more significant and related to the church there. But outside of that area, and definitely in Catholic history, that's not the case. So you guys take it easy, and I'll talk to you in a video coming soon.